Uh, very proud of what you're doing, and I think it's much needed. So thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you again for watching the Bubb Report. Viewers and listeners, we want to thank you sincerely. Ashley, thank you so very much. Senator Chester Humphrey, welcome to the Bubb Report. Mr. Mitchell, welcome to the program. The Honorable Jumani Williams, we call him Jumani, who is the public advocate for the city of New York. The Honorable Baz Diopande, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Pandey, welcome to the Bubb Report of Grenada. The Honorable Tobias Clement. Mr. Clement, welcome to the Bubb Report. Is it Nicolai or Nikolai? I hope I pronounced it.
Nikolai.
It's Nikolai. Thank you.
Yes.
And welcome to the program, Her Excellency Ambassador Luan Gilchrist. Mr. Randall Robinson, you are here in your private capacity and in your personal capacity. Yesterday, we learned that you were detained by law enforcement in Grenada. So you come from a family of public servants.
Yes, we are a family of public servants.
You're saying that you have to do more, but my question is, what have you done as President of the Union to ensure that that happens?
To the cards that I have drawn, that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
Hello and welcome to the weekly edition of the Bubb Report. This week on our program, we take a national general knowledge quiz with a group of patriotic citizens who form part of the Grenada 50+ Nation Building Initiative. Members of the initiative articulate the view that as Grenada looks to 50 years of political independence in its 49th year, it needs not only a new political modality, but also needs to adopt a paradigm shift from the politics of survivability to the politics of sustainability, and also needs to look at models of governance that produce sovereign citizens, fully vested in their own self-governance. Also on the report, we sit with a team of media watchdogs on a representative of Grenada's activist civil society to unpack and make sense of the issues animating public discourse in Grenada. We welcome our guests, journalist and host of the narrative program, Kalistra Farrier, Tesfa Aki Peterson of the Grenada 50+ Nation Building Initiative, Davidson Ned of the Independent Caucus on Constitution Reform, and Raul Titus, journalist. In our weekly editorial, Dr. Kellon Bubb remembers the late great Calypso academician, Gordon Rohlehr, who unexpectedly passed away last week. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to yet another edition of the Bubb Report. Now, this week we will pay tribute to a quintessential Caribbean intellectual, a quintessential Caribbean man. Now, the post-colonial Caribbean civilization has the proud distinction of producing literary and scholarly giants who broke the cultural dominance of Anglo-Saxon colonialism in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. One such academic and intellectual giant unexpectedly transitioned in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago last week, mere weeks after the region said goodbye to the late great Black Stalin. Professor Emeritus Gordon Rohlehr, who designed and piloted the first Caribbean literature course in Caribbean higher education, played a crucial role in the expansion and development of course offerings in Caribbean, English literature, and post-colonial studies at the University of the West Indies. Crucially, however, the Guyanese-born scholar, who called Trinidad and Tobago his adopted home, is best known for his passionate and well-respected work on Calypso scholarship. His Calypso scholarship quickly made him a sought-after authority, having written several influential books and hundreds of papers on the origins and cultural significance of calypso to the region. He also generously shared his passion and expertise in numerous lectures and interviews globally. In the early 1990s, Rohlehr published the text Calypso and Society in Pre-Independence Trinidad, which explored the development of calypso music from pre-emancipation to the late 1950s. Rohlehr, who was a great admirer of the great Mighty Sparrow, published a collection of his writings on the Calypso King of the World entitled My Whole Life is Calypso, Essays on Sparrow in 2015. His interest in researching calypso grew from his interactions with the Caribbean arts movement in London in the late 1960s. He also championed the development of the concept of the Caribbean aesthetic with other literary Caribbean giants, including Barbadian poet Camus Brathwaite, George Lamming, and Guyanese artist Aubrey Williams. His work found international interest beyond the borders of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. He served as a visiting professor at Harvard University, Johns Hopkins University, Tulane and Dartmouth in the United States, and at York University in Toronto, Canada. Dr. Gabriel Hossain of the UWI's Institute for Gender and Development Studies perhaps captures the gravity of the man we have lost in the intellectual community. She says, quote, he was ubiquitously recognized as the finest mind regarding calypso and a deep philosopher of the Caribbean. His writing was thoughtful and lyrical, illuminating and precise. He was also kind, affable, humorous, encouraging, and warm. For decades, I'd cross his path, here and there, and he would always stop to chat. A gentle giant of a man he was. The Caribbean will not be the same without him here. A Guyanese son of the soil and Caribbean man of the kind heralded by Black Stallion. He was an era now past. May the angels sing Kaiso and more Kaiso to welcome him home, unquote. We here at the Bubb Report extend our condolences to the family of this great comrade. May he rest in peace, and may his work live on in those who intensely appreciate the Caribbean literary and cultural aesthetic. And as Grenada celebrates 49 years of independence, the Bubb Report takes this time to salute the Grenada Boys Secondary School, the oldest secondary school on the island of Grenada, which was established 138 years ago. The GBSS, initially known as the St. George's Grammar School, officially opened on the 2nd of February 1885 at Mrs. Gray's premises on Church Street in St. George's, with 10 male students. In the 1910 to 1911 academic year, the school was restructured and renamed the Grenada Boys Secondary School and was relocated to Melville Street in the building that once housed the police barracks. In May of 1946, the school was relocated to Tantine at the location which previously housed the Windward Islands Battalion for the Second World War. We finally want to salute also a group of extraordinary Grenadian nurses celebrating 42 years of years of service to the nursing profession in Grenada and around the world. These nurses, including my dear cousin, Catherine Gemma Kingston Bain, Nina Grant, and others, graduated from the now defunct Grenada Nursing School under the expert tutelage of nursing educators Ann Peters and the late Lauret Clarkson. 3 cheers to these wonderful nurses, and may they continue to provide service to Grenada and the wider community. And at this time, folks, what we want to do is to get into our first segment of the day. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have our first guest here, Ms. Tesfa Peterson, but she will not be able to join us at this time. So what we will be doing for the first segment of the program, we actually have a treat for you, and we would play in its entirety the first official independence address delivered by Grenada's father of independence, the late Sir Eric Matthew Gerry. That independence address was delivered at the then Grenada Parliament located on York House. So we are going to play that particular national address that was delivered by Sir Eric Gerry on the morning of February 7th, 1974, and then we will come back with the panel segment of the week. Please stand by.
President, Mr. Speaker, very, very distinguished friends of Grenada, because man must essentially pay homage to God the Creator, I am craving your indulgence at this point in time to ask everyone to rise and join me in praying from the Holy Scriptures, Psalm Thanksgiving, Psalm 117.
Oh, praise the Lord, all ye nations. Praise all ye people.
For his merciful kindness is great toward us, and the truth of the Lord endureth forever. Praise ye the Lord. Thank you. Today is the red letter day for Grenada. For indeed, in the entire history of our country, there has been no event, neither could there be in the future any event to parallel the importance, to parallel the significance of this morning's event. And I feel especially deep and profound sense of gratification in the privilege and the honor bestowed upon me this morning in receiving these veritable documents signed and sealed and delivered for and on behalf of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I feel a sense of gratification indeed, having been appointed by the great supreme architect of the universe to be the one upon whose shoulders the responsibilities contained in these documents must in great measures rest. This morning, we have with us so many distinguished friends, and I call you friends with the deepest sense of seriousness and meaningfulness. We're very happy that you've come to witness this historic event. And I know that lots of you have come, ladies and gentlemen, not without some concern in coming, because for some reason or the other, my country has been receiving some of the most vicious attacks by the various communication media. But I am glad that you have made it possible to come and to see for yourselves and to enjoy for yourselves the warmth of friendship of the people of this country. What has happened here this morning has made me feel confident to face the future with fortitude, with strength, and with hopefulness. The measure taken by the British government and Her Majesty the Queen have brought to us great joy and happiness. And I take pleasure in recording grateful thankfulness to Her Majesty for giving her assent to the necessary bills, and indeed to the members of Parliament, both in the House of Representatives, the House of Commons, and in the House of Lords. The enemies of progress of this country have worked hard, assiduously hard. The voice of the large but silent majority has spoken. Grenada is now facing a new era. My people have been aroused to...
1 minute, Mr. Just 1 second, Mr. Mayor. The Honorable Prime Minister may continue.
Grenada has been aroused to a sense of responsibility, and both government and people have decided, have pledged unreservedly, unflinchingly, to accept the challenge, to accept the task that lies before us. Certainly, as all can see, the circumstances under which we have emerged, the circumstances under which we have attained, the circumstances under which we have conquered, have been stringently loaded against us. We therefore need your friendship. And I am particularly pleased to note that the British Commonwealth of Nations have accepted the application of Grenada to join the Commonwealth, and I understand that our application was unanimously accepted. It is also very gratifying indeed to have received from prime ministers and presidents personal messages to me as the head of government coming from various heads. I am thrilled by the message delivered here this morning and coming from the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Personal messages have come to me. Man is the greatest thing that God has created in this earth plane. And once we put our hearts and heads and hands together and invoke the assistance of the great Almighty God, nothing is impossible. It might be fitting at this moment to read again, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, perhaps for the sake of the record, and perhaps to emphasize the need for all to take heed, part of what I said earlier today on the occasion of the flag-raising ceremony. And now I crave your indulgence. I said, among other things, earlier today, immeasurable damage has been done to our dear land and people by the enemies of progress. Peaceful, loyal citizens and residents have been made to face great inconveniences. The enemies of progress have done more damage to Grenada than Hurricane Janet. The tourist industry has been virtually crippled. Hotel owners, hotel workers, taxi drivers, vendors, farmers, nutmeg producers have all suffered considerably. Trade unions have called illegal strikes. Businessmen and women have defied the laws of the land. Several of the people have committed breaches of the law. However, now should not be the time for recriminations and reprisals, but rather now is the time for goodwill. Now is the time for unity. Now is the time for reconstruction. And so I now appeal to all Grenada in its totality to join her heads, hearts, and hands in unity to repair the damage done and to build a Grenada for ourselves and for posterity. I invite all opposition factions to let me hear from them as soon as possible regarding the reaction to my appeal. God bless you. On behalf of government and the people, it is with the deepest feeling and the thankfulness with which I, on their behalf and on my behalf, have had the great pleasure and honor of receiving the instruments.
That was the late Sir Eric Gairy, Grenada's father of independence, in the first independence address as a sovereign, politically independent nation delivered at the Grenada Parliament at the time, which was housed at York House in St. George's. At the end of the presentation, his speech really reflected the tensions that existed back in 1974. Of course, Grenada's road to independence was not paved with goodwill. In fact, there were serious internecine tensions in the society, lots of sectorial tensions, and Sir Eric Gairy's relationship certainly with opposition, with trade union, with civil society at the time was extremely fractured. In fact, we would remember in reading history that on the night that Grenada became independent, when the flag was raised for the first time at Fort George, the entire country was plunged in darkness because there was a major blackout that affected the entire country at the time. But what we want to do, folks, is to take a quick break, and then we will come back with the panel segment of the week. So please stand by. The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. And welcome back, folks. At this point, what I want to do is to welcome our guest for the panel segment of this week. He is first guest here. We have Callistra Faria, who is a producer of Grenada's very popular The Narrative, as well as Mr. Davidson Ned, who represents the Independent Caucus on Constitution Reform, and Mr. Raul Titus. Mr. Raul Titus, who is a Grenadian journalist resident in the Grenadian diaspora. But of course, he's very attuned to all of the events and happenings in Grenada. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you. Good morning. Happy Independence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to first respond to that independence address that we just heard from Sir Eric Matthew Gary. At the end of that address, he was very combative, very aspirational address there in many respects, but at the end he was very combative, and that combativeness, I believe, sort of captures what George Brizan calls Grenada as the island of conflict. But I want to get you guys' gut reaction to what you just heard. Who wants to start? Raul, I see you smiling. Let's go.
Okay. I was hoping that, they say ladies first, so I was hoping.
Callistra was not. Callistra, you want to go ahead? You need to unmute the microphone, Callistra. There you go.
Right. Am I being bullied by a panel of men here? What is this? After being a journalist for 28 years, the latest first thing, I don't even know what that is anymore. I think I've operated as gender neutral professionally for so long.
Chivalry and dead,
I had dinner with Peter Wickham the other night in Barbados, and I could see him debating whether or not he should pull the chair out for me. So I told him, it's quite all right. I won't beat you over the head if you do. You can pull the chair out. But on to the topic at hand. I think at that time, Sir Eric Gary, while the speech, because of the nature of what it was, had to take a particular tone. What was Grenada aspiring to? What was the dream? What are we trying to achieve? But we have to remember what was happening in the country at that time. I mean, there are people who wanted independence, but as far as the people who experienced it that I've spoken to have said to me, not under Eric Gary. This was one of the things that it wasn't so much opposing independence, but opposing Eric Gary at that time. And so, as the leader of the country, he had to be a bit combative. You mentioned that at the end of the speech, he was a bit combative. Certainly, given the intensity of what was happening, we raised our flag in darkness because the unions pulled the plug. So he didn't have a choice. He had to be. He could not show weakness at that time. He was doing something big with big opposition to him. And so he needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to Raul. Raul, we've heard stories from some of our senior colleagues in the media, Josephine Maguire, Eugenie Mason, and Sherma Wells. And then, they always talk about how much of a tyrant Gary was with respect to propaganda. I'm not too sure if you also heard those stories, but your thoughts on that particular speech. How do you think Sir Eric would treat us in the media?
Okay, well, Sir Eric, but I'm listening to the speech, and particularly the tail end of the speech, and I'm hearing, I would say the speech may have been appropriate for the time then and for the circumstance then, but as somebody who has been looking at Grenada over the years and hearing similar speeches from similar leaders, I heard a lot of similarity of themes. Meaning one, the need for unity. Two, the need for a certain level of collaboration between the opposition and the government. Those kind of themes that he seemed to be harping on there. We've heard those themes reverberated through the years from leaders. And so now it brings us to the point now of 49 years, and here we are on the brink of 50 years as an independent nation. And then if we could be repeating those themes, the same theme, Gary, some of the same messages, let's be honest, some of the same messages Gary was sending out years ago, the same themes, calling for the kind of cooperation and the kind of unity and that sort of thing. So we hear now, 49 years later, we're hearing it. So it begs the question. The question you have to ask now is, to what extent have we progressed? To what extent have we move forward? How we develop the applied resources to the different sectors of our society to advance ourselves? And we're talking about from road construction to utilities, to education, to the health sector, to personal growth and consumer protection, to the funding of the agriculture, development of the agricultural sector. So to what extent to political maturity? So you have to ask yourself the question, am I going to hear those themes echoed 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or how many years from now? Are we going to be hearing the same thing? So you have to start to ask yourself, to what extent are we going around in circles? I'm giving credit to Gary on what he did and so on. I'm not taking anything away from that, but we have to be, but 49 years suggests that we getting mature now. We go into 50 years, and then we should see things happening at a transformational level and growth in all sectors and a certain kind of a development on a certain kind of a scale. So then you have to ask yourself, are we moving? Where are we going? So those questions sort of trigger those thoughts in my mind.
Absolutely. And Mr. Ned, let's hear from you. Let's get your gut reaction, if you could unmute your mic on what you just heard.
Yes, thank you again, and greetings to your panelists and to the listening public. What resonated with me this morning, the content of the speech. So Eric first began with a very important acknowledgement, and he spoke to God as creator. Our Constitution reflects the affirmation that our God is the supreme authority, the supreme being. He spoke again about his government and the people that the government represents. Now, our democracy is based on representation. So the words in context is really important. He has acknowledged that he is a representative. He's not a leader. He's saying that he's a representative. And we're speaking, in context of what was said. So the third thing that resonated with me was that he received the Constitution. He said he received the Constitution, the documents, he referred it as, for and on behalf of the people of Grenada. And that, to me, is the most important comment that he made, because we have drifted so far away from the acknowledgement that the Constitution is, in fact, the people's Constitution. It belongs to the people. So the people, and the Constitution, it begins with the phrase, whereas the people. The Constitution reflects the desires, the principles, the aspirations of the Grenadian people, and it is owned by them. And that is something that the Grenadian people have to value. We have to place a value on that our Constitution is ours. And whilst the Constitution protects you, the provisions of the Constitution is supposed to protect you. It is the duty of every citizen to protect the Constitution. So when we see or we hear about constitutional infringements of the other citizen, it is always important that we take note, because the other citizen, it could be us at any time. It could be any one of us at any time. And when you infringe on one constitutional right, you infringe on all. So for me, those were the important aspects of the speech. And at the end, there was a call for national unity. Despite all the actions that were taken on at the time, he distinctively called for the nation to come together, heads, hearts, and hands in unity for the development of Grenada. So that, in a nutshell, would be what it is for me.
All right, and Mr. Ned, before I bring on the other panelists here, now we are going to quickly segue into the purpose of today's program, and that has to do with having a watchdog conversation on the new administration in St. George's. But not only on the new administration, we are going to look at other issues that are affecting Grenada at this time. Now, Mr. Ned, we do have a new administration in Grenada. The previous administration, as you know, they were very adamant about partnering and working with you in civil society. Just like the previous administration, the current administration has been doing that as well. How would you assess your relationship with the current administration in respect of their commitments to working with civil society? What kinds of engagements have you had with the new administration as an independent caucus on constitutional reform?
The previous administration, there was a mechanism for engagement. The social partners was one of them. As the various civil society organizations, as a grouping of civil society, there were engagement, there were consultations on issues. And through the social partners in particular, matters of development was brought to those partners for discussion. So the churches, the Chamber of Commerce, the broader sections of civil society, the farmers, etc., they were all afforded a place at the table. I personally, we don't think that the best was made of those engagements, and there was always questions as to whether there was genuine engagement and a genuine quest for development. But what can be said was that there were these engagements. We have seen a different kind of engagement with this new administration. I cannot say that the grouping of civil society has been directly engaged as the umbrella body for civil society organizations. The umbrella body, I don't know that we've had an engagement with this government in the last 6 months. No. So it seems
have they reached out, however, to telegraph their intentions to engage with you?
Not that I know of. I cannot see that.
Okay, not that you know of. Okay, and you said with the previous administration, sort of, and in conversation with other members of the grouping of civil society organizations, I got the impression that that type of engagement was a box checking exercise, essentially. Would you characterize it that way?
It was supposed to be a box checking exercise. The results of those meetings, the interactions, the discussions in the meetings, the results may not always have been what civil society wanted, but there was an engagement that we can see.
Okay. All right. Let me bring in the journalists here, two veteran journalists. In fact, a fun fact, when I started in media at the Grenadian Voice, I met these two people at the Grenadian Voice. They were my seniors in the business. I was still a very young and exciting person coming into the school of Leslie Pierre, if you will. And I'm so grateful that I still maintain connections with you too. But of course, Kalistra and Raul, would you say that given the way that this current administration engages with media, that it has sort of ignited a sense of having to really do more, that journalists are really now having to go digging for information and go searching for information, because you do not have the luxury of the post-cabinet press briefing. You do not have the luxury of a barrage of press releases coming from the GIS or the Prime Minister's office. You do not have that luxury now. And so would you say that sort of there is a reinvigoration of the work of journalists in Grenada? Or would that be a stretch?
Well, there is a... Oh, sorry.
Let's start with Callistra this time.
Okay. Yeah, as you were asking the question and you talked about news releases. News releases are an indication of a story. It is not a story. And a barrage of information from the government that's not doing our work, or that information just gives us their side of it. We have to go digging. We always have to go digging. It is dangerous when you don't go digging and you accept what is sent to you, because everyone has their agenda and their perspective that they want to put out. It is our job to find the truth in all of it and all of the sides in all of it. They've been sending out news releases, but I think that they are less enthusiastic about telling us what they're doing. But that ought not to stop us. We still need to find the information and look for the information. For instance, a few years ago, there was this big talk around Grenada. Public officers were being paid late. No, I do a program similar to yours where I interview people. It is on my program that I would present the information that I have. And so I called the Permanent Secretary for Finance to find out what was going on. He spoke to me, and I needed him on the program. So he said, well, speak to the press secretary. I'm okay. I'm up for this. We did a pre-interview, and he was ready to do the interview. At least he told me so. About 2 hours later, the government decided to issue a news release giving the dates of payment for the government, instead of allowing that the senior public officer in the Ministry of Finance to come on to talk about the state of the country's finances, which is what I wanted to get out of the interview. And so I called and I said, what happened? I was waiting for an interview. And I was told that the press secretary, and I'm full disclosure here, the press secretary said they would prefer to send out a news release. Now, apart from the fact that showed a level of ineptness on their part in terms of handling the issue by raising more questions with that few lines that, okay, these are the dates that the government is paying, it does not address the concern that was across the nation that the government was unable to pay. That's a big rumor that you want to nip in the bud if you know anything about damage control and PR.
Correct.
But instead of allowing an interview and trusting the professionalism, the experience, and the abilities of the Permanent Secretary for Finance, who's worked in the government for many years and held high-profile positions abroad, and who can handle himself and who knows the information, this was the response. And I found it to be an antagonistic response from the government to me as a media person by refusing. I mean, you can refuse an interview if you want, but I found it was less than an ideal situation in terms of the engagement there. Because then it looks like you want to hide something. So no, I am digging even deeper, and I have not let the story go. It doesn't matter if it's 5 weeks from now. A story like that is not going to get old. If the government really did, in fact, have issues, a cash flow problem, that caused them to strictly adhere to the last one day before the last working day of the month to pay public officers, then it has to be recorded, it has to be reported. So I'm still digging, but it doesn't seem as if I would get anything more out of the government, at least. But I'm still looking at it. So I think that the people's business, they need to be more forthcoming. This need to know thing, is
that still rubbed me the wrong way, because it's just that there's a height of arrogance there.
All of the people of the country who are now just totally defending and protecting as they have the right to do if they want to. They'll realize later on down the road how dangerous that is. But you know, these are the same people who are guarding the fort, who are being told, we're only going to tell you what you need to know. This is not 1972. This is 2023, you know, and so the people's business needs to be told to the people. What's the secrecy? What's the need to know? And I suppose later on you're going to get into that very long news conference, which, by the way, I did not attend, to talk about how that itself was a hostile act towards the press, in my opinion. Roll.
Yeah.
Take it over, bro.
Roll, let's get you to Wayne here. You know, Callistra has open bat here. And really, I think the issue that she speaks to sort of captures the relationship of the administration with the press. It appears to me that they would prefer to speak to their base, okay, to leak things to their base, to their friendly media, and not really communicate with sort of an open posture to established press. Of course, there is, I think, also there is a souring of the relationship between the established press in Grenada and the administration and supporters of the administration, because they felt as if some in the press were caping, they were curry favoring the previous administration. But let's get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so just to comment, I can speak from both sides of the coin. I can speak from the public information.
You work in GIS, yes.
Yeah, so from the public information standpoint, I can comment on that because like him, hate him, like the previous administration, hate them, one thing they were very good at is public information. And at the GIS event that I was a part of, we were aggressive with, not political, public information. Radio output, releases output, television output, PSAs output, Prime Minister's constituency meetings. It was a big thing with flyers and information. The issues were the issues. We presented it, we promoted it. Public information. This is the era of information era, and people need to know what's happening, whether you like it or not. Okay, fine. The other side of the coin was an independent journalist, which I've also been part of. You have an antagonistic role, a natural antagonistic role with whoever is in power. It doesn't matter if it's NNP, it doesn't matter if it's NDC. Your role as an independent journalist is to be antagonistic, because they want to hide certain information, but you have to get certain information out in the public interest. So that sort of relationship has to happen. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, what is happening now is quite interesting, because I asked myself one question: who is advising the administration in terms of information, right? Because I'm not too sure if they're getting good advice. In terms of one, the administration itself have been making a series of rookie mistakes in terms of publishing appointments through the Gazette, in terms of sending out information that they need to send out. Also, some blatant mistake as to you channeling political information on the GIS platform. That is a no-no. You cannot do that. They've been doing these things, right? We all know this. Additionally, I think the relationship between the press secretary and the media has not, it seems as though she's been trying lately. I heard your comment and I heard other media person's comment that she's been trying lately. I think you said on one occasion she responded within 2 hours and so on. But it says that something is going on. It says that the administration appears to have a position with respect to media, and I'm not clear what that position is, but it's not necessarily an accommodating one in which Callistra and yourself or other journalists can get the information they want. The big travesty was a 3-hour press conference with 7 ministers. I mean, that's like information overkill.
I'm sorry. That was an act of information sabotage against the press, and I would say that Callistra. But I want you to go ahead, Roland, and then I'll get Callistra to weigh in.
Right. So then somebody's incredibly bright or somebody's incredibly stupid, because what I'm saying is that a lot of what they're doing in terms of handling the press and information output and information movement is really is really wrong. And because you see, we had a technological era, and then the information era comes in. So you have to give people public information. So it would either work for what is happening now. Could either, I don't see how we can work for them. It really will undermine themselves, because sometimes there's the few good things that they may be doing, and people don't know. They may just undermine themselves. But it is an issue, and in their interest, they will need to take a hard look at their information policy and how they relate to the media.
And Kalistra, yes, about that press con, that was the first gut reaction I had when I came from work and I sat down to review the press conference was all of these ministers, almost the entire cabinet, and then you give reporters the opportunity to ask two questions or two rounds of two questions. That to me did not make any sense at all. But Kalistra, I want to get you to weigh in on that.
Well, one of the things I thought was after your editorial and my commentary was this sort of passive-aggressive response to it. We're going to throw everything at you because you're saying we're not available, which is kind of childish, if I'm right in thinking that might have been it. But seriously, it was too much from their standpoint. They should have known it was too much. Their advisors, their PR people, their press secretary should have advised them that something like that would be really more counterproductive. And the media, really, in my view, ought not to have facilitated this. Once you see the amount of ministers who are there and the time that is allotted for the news conference, the media should have abstained from participating, because I am not sure whether or not they got sufficient value out of the press engagement with the government. And limiting the number of questions that you can ask. Oh, of course, you have to have things managed. You're doing it within a particular
there has to be a structure.
Time.
We are not saying that there ought not to be a structure,
right?
But this,
so there has to be a structure. But would there be more time for questions if you structure your part of it, which is the information that you first give in a news conference, and then open the floor to questions? When I called the press secretary afterwards to ask for the Minister of Health had long promised to come on my show, and I called to set it up, and she says, well, we had a news conference. It's a pity you weren't there. The news conference would have been, except for information, a little bit of information here or there, which I can just get on Zoom. The news conference was useless to the narrative. I need the minister on for 25 minutes, half an hour, so I can properly interview you, interrogate you, ask questions that have to do with your ministry. What I want out of the program, out of an interview with the Minister of Health, may not be what you spoke about, probably wasn't. I have my questions, I have my obligation to my constituents, the people of the country who I report to through my program. And so the next message I got from the press secretary was that the minister, there was a very long conference, so the minister said things that everything that needed to be said was said. So they felt that they put the information out there, and the ability to question the information that they are putting out there was to a certain extent taken away with the length of that news conference. And they refused to appear in any environment where there's extensive questioning and the time to ask questions. But I say the media, sometimes what we accept, what we are willing to accept, as there's a saying in Grenada, how check bring itself, that's so it blue, and that I think is part of the problem. You walk into a room and you see 8 ministers for a 1-hour news conference, and they're all going to speak. You don't want to be part of that, because you're not going to get anything out of it except taking notes from what they said and reporting that. And I can guarantee you that is not our job.
I always, whenever I look at situations like that, I think of myself, my mentor, my first journalistic mentor, Leslie Pierre. What would Leslie Pierre have done?
Are you going to talk about the walkouts again?
Probably change the
Yes,
walkout.
because we were part of the era, and perhaps in the mid 2000s, the media sort of lost its spine in Grenada. But I do remember the era when I worked in media in Grenada with people like yourself, Michael Bascom, Raul Titus, Philomena Robertson when she was a journalist, Kay Julian, Carol Williams. We all staged walkouts against former Prime Minister Mitchell. He would tell you that, right? Former Prime Minister Mitchell, in fact, he attempted on many occasions to censor work that I published. Okay, and so I'm not too sure where we lost our spine along the way, but I think uh, that has to change. But Mr. Ned, I want to bring you back here, sir. You've been listening to this conversation, but of course, your civil society organization, your grouping, and other people associated with civil society groupings and organization have also expressed concerns with respect to what you view as constitutional breaches. Perhaps, just as you said, this an abrogation or respect for constitutional norms. Are we also seeing that in this period, sir?
Well, the perfect example would be what is being lost right now. Kalistra requested an interview with the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance, it was, she said. Now, permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance is a public officer. Our system of government has what is called the separation of powers, and the directions of a public officer is through the Public Service Commission. Now, what is interesting is that when she requested the interview, the public officer referred to the press secretary. Am I getting it right, Kalistra? And here
Kalistra, is that correct? Yeah, yes, he referred to the press secretary. Yes, yeah.
Now, the press secretary has no authority. No, absolutely none. No authority to direct a public officer, much less a permanent secretary who is in charge of a ministry, right? She is the supervisor. It's a constitutional appointment. Section 67 of the Constitution gives her supervision over the entire ministry. She's the supervisor.
That's a permanent secretary, yes. He or she, yes.
And the permanent secretary does not have to answer to a press secretary. There is no constitutional appointment. The press secretary is a political appointment. There is nothing like that in the Constitution. The interaction between the people and their representative has to be direct. So it is, you are the people's representative, and for the people to talk to you, they must go through somebody else. Now, so we have to seriously ask ourselves, what are we creating? Because, Dr. Bob, we are the ones who have allowed this for the last 30 years. We have sat by and allowed our rights or the provisions, the protections that are entrenched to be eroded. So we have an entire generation now who all they know is governance according to a particular political party. That's all they know. And herein lies the fundamental issue that we are experiencing. There is an elephant in the room, and everybody else is being squeezed. The political party, there is no constitutional recognition of a political party. Our constitution directs that we elect representatives. We have gone away from this. We have digressed from this. We have, we've been broadsided into now electing leaders. So when you elect a leader, there's a fundamental difference between a leader and a representative. and we're suffering the consequences. We're suffering the consequences. So our independence did not only bring with us the red, green, and gold colors. It did not just bring a pledge that we took, an anthem that we sing, but it brought with it a constitution. And as Uncle Gary would have said, he received that constitution on behalf of the people. It's ours. And we do not understand the power that that constitution gives to us. Because clearly, our representatives work for us. And until as a people, we're able to bring that to the fore and let that sink and to educate the only generation who have over the last 30 years or so elected leaders that no, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. We are actually supposed to be representing. We are supposed to be electing representatives who are going to reflect our wishes, our desires, our aspirations, what is moral in our society, what is not. That's what a representative do. It's not unlike you going to a lawyer and the lawyer going to court. He represents your interests as directed by you.
Let us talk about the appointment of the new permanent secretary. That is not the new permanent secretary, I'm sorry, the new secretary to the cabinet, which is a constitutional position, of course. And I'm glad that you brought to my attention the specific role of the cabinet secretary within the confines of government. Now, I want to get you to talk about that role in terms of merit. Is there sort of a line of merit? In other words, the person who is the most senior in the annals of the public service is the person that gets the position, or in many respects, is that a case where the head of government, the prime minister, can unilaterally decide who he wants to appoint as the secretary to the cabinet?
The secretary to the cabinet falls under the directive. The appointment falls under the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission is supposed to take certain considerations when that appointment is being contemplated. One of the major considerations is that the officer must have seniority. And seniority is, if there are other officers who are being considered for the post of the cabinet secretary, that seniority, right? Qualifications for the job, and seniority and experience, you will understand, because the CABSEC has to interact with all members of the public service. So you would particularly want to have somebody who has worked as the permanent secretary, possibly in 2 or 3 or 4 other ministries, have experience managing a ministry, because that is what is important. The CABSEC is, in fact, and I'm reading from section 68 of the Constitution, right? She has charge over the cabinet office, the office of cabinet, taking the minutes, making sure that the decisions of cabinet get out, making provisions for whatever has to happen for the cabinet to have meetings, etc. And for conveying the decisions of cabinet. So where does the decisions of cabinet go? But the other public officers and other permanent secretaries, people who may have applied for cabinet conclusions, etc. So she has to have experience. She has to have experience within the service. So those are the considerations.
Okay. So I react then to the appointment of Ms. Carver-Lett as the new CABSEC. Do you feel as if it followed that due process?
From what I know Ms. Lett as a senior customs officer. within recent years, maybe 2 years ago. And I know that she's worked in customs for an extended period. Beyond that, I don't think that she has any other experience or any other extensive experience in the public service. I can think of a number of other permanent secretaries, senior public officers immediately, who may be, based on the considerations of the Public Service Commission or the requirements of the Public Service Commission, more qualified.
Okay, all right.
And
now let me bring, go ahead.
I don't know if Patricia or Ron may be able to clarify for us, but is she appointed to the post of cabinet sec, or there's no new post of assistant cabinet secretary? So if somebody can clarify that, I am not sure.
Okay.
The central point here is this:
the Constitution make a provision.
Go ahead, Raul. Go ahead.
No, I would say the central point here is this, and it's quite simple. This issue with Cavalet is nothing new. The central issue is that the Constitution, the same Constitution that we're talking about, that's the independence and whatever, it gives the Prime Minister, it makes the Prime Minister the most powerful entity. And our Constitution makes the Prime Minister even more powerful than the US President. No, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying in the context of the parameters of Grenada or the Caribbean, right? I'm not talking about US Prime Minister versus Grenada Prime. I'm saying that our Constitution gives our Prime, it makes him so powerful that these issues about appointed by the Public Service Commission and all of that is all of it is technically irrelevant, because all these leaders have been abusing and using the Constitution over the past 2 years, from Gary, right, to Mitchell, to Bradford. They have all been using the Constitution to do what they want and abusing the Constitution. They've all been doing it. And Deacon Mitchell is young and he's learning, he's bright and he's brilliant, and he will also do the same, right? When he realizes how powerful this Constitution is and what he can do, maybe he doesn't realize what it is. So that is the issue. So when constitutional, and then the public, we as Grenadians have to take blame, because we resist constitutional reform on a couple occasions. Things that were good for us as a good starting point, constitutional reform that came about, things that were good for us, things we could have rallied around. The political parties divided us, and we as Grenadians did not come out and support to bring about the change. Carriacou been talking about it, wanting name on the passport for years. Sugar Patch had that, the first Carriacou Calypsonian to bring that issue to the fore in Calypso. Carriacou themselves didn't rally enough for that change. So what are we talking about? So this is the issue. The issue is we have a powerful constitution that empowers a prime minister, and eventually they abuse it. So that is why they can pick without that is why the merit of it, of somebody as a cabinet secretary, that becomes irrelevant. The police commissioner issue, the appointment of if the prime minister comes and he wants to move the police commissioner and he's the most senior person, all he says is, oh, I don't have the confidence of this commissioner.
And that is what the previous prime minister said in respect of removing Gemma Bain Thomas, for example, from her role as secretary to the cabinet. And then she took the Mitchell, the former Mitchell administration to court and won. Yes, Dave. Dave, go ahead.
Okay, so
you wanted to get a word in. Yes, go ahead.
We have to be very careful about the prime minister, because the prime minister has powers that are ascribed to him in the Constitution. But the prime minister also has powers that are ascribed to him by the people. Now, when the people allow the Prime Minister to operate outside of the authority of the Constitution. We allow it. So the Prime Minister takes an action. And let us look, for instance, at the declaration of the state of emergency that managed the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. The declaration of the state of emergency under Section 17 of the Constitution directs that it is an action that the Governor General only has authority to take. Now, what happened? The Prime Minister was the one who made the announcement. The Prime Minister declared the state of emergency, and we accepted it because the majority of us said that this was not the time to protest. This was not the time to question the intentions of the Prime Minister. So we ascribe a lot of powers to the leader of to the Prime Minister that he does not have. The Constitution does not provide for it. The appointment of the CABSEC is a public service, is the responsibility of the Public Service Commission. Now, if the Prime Minister is interfering in the operations of the Public Service Commission, that also is a violation of the provisions of the Constitution, because the Public Service Commission is an independent authority. They function subject to the control or direction of no authority. The decisions of the Public Service Commission is final. So the Prime Minister don't have anything to do with that. No, if we allow it, and for that to happen, there must be complicity, there must be cooperation of entities that have an authority to so stop. Now, you mentioned Karakou, and it's interesting.
Yes.
You mentioned Karakou and the change of name of state bill. But whilst there was a lot of talk about unity and recognition in Karakou, nobody read the bill, because the bill that was presented for the people to vote on went way beyond what was mentioned in the referendum. The bill gave the powers to the parliament of the country to say where Grenadians, to delimit Grenadians' boundaries, the boundaries of Grenada. That was never the authority of parliament before the referendum. That was never the authority. Parliament couldn't get up and say that our boundary is now off Caledony Island. They couldn't. But with the bill that was put before us, they would have had the authority to do so. There was also the question of what were public islands, what private islands. And again, as a people, we accept these things without any investigation. And as Kalistra said earlier, there are agendas, and we have to uncover the book. We have to open the book, and we have to read the bill. And when you do that, you get a totally different understanding. We have allowed the Prime Minister to be a leader. I spoke about it. He's a representative. He's your representative. He's my representative. He's supposed to tell him what to do. Simple. Tell him what to do.
We are his bosses. Yeah, we are absolutely the bosses. Except, and Kalistra, yeah, we have to get to some viewer comments, and then we have to segue into some of the other news stories that are animating public discourse. But before we do, I do want to speak. I do want to address some comments in the comment section. There is a lot of whataboutism, and I'm going to start with Mr. Vincent Ignatius Roberts. So Robert says, lots of wrongs were tolerated under KCM with total silence. Now that it is entrenched, people talking. Why were so many silent under KCM? Now, Mr. Vincent Roberts and others, I take great exception to that. There is this tendency by some of you to generalize everybody in the media as being silent under the NNP administration, to generalize everybody in civil society as being silent under the NNP administration, to generalize people in society who, when they spoke out, or did not speak out at all, when in fact we know that there was some in the wilderness speaking out on issues of national importance who have been consistent across the board. The Bubb Report happens to be one of those platforms that attempted to be independent. So I do take great exception to the notion that everybody in Grenada suddenly are now speaking out on issues of national importance when that's not the case. It might have been the case for some people, but it has not been the case for everyone. So all I'm saying is, in this public discourse, that it is not helpful to generalize everybody and to suggest that, well, the previous guys were doing it, but you guys did not speak out about it. Why are you speaking out now? I'm just trying to understand what is the objective of that. Are we not supposed to address matters of national importance to the country? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Ned.
Dr. Bobby, that is
yes.
Totally untrue.
Yes.
They carried placards together protesting excesses from the Keith Mitchell administration. So that's absolutely untrue.
Yeah, I just thought I needed to say that because
they led marches to the ministerial, criticizing the electoral office and the interference the executive to the electoral office. What are we talking about? That is absolutely
I mean,
Kalistra, go ahead. I want to give Kalistra a word.
I ended up in this epic shot on the floor with a minister standing menacingly over me. There was a reason for that. But it's interesting though that I was on Facebook and I saw a comment. I think someone talked about public officers' salaries, and a candidate who ran on an NNP ticket in the last elections was commenting that you're not hearing anything about the salary issue because all of the journalists have lockjaw. So it is a desire to manipulate the media and to get the media to facilitate your agenda, and it comes from both sides. Whoever is not hearing the kumbaya from you as a journalist, which you're not supposed to hear from me as a journalist, takes offense to that and brands you as being in the camp of the other side. You know, if I really was getting the pay I'm supposed to be getting from both sides, well, I would be driving a Benz. You know, everybody.
Well, I mean, in my case, in my case, in my case, there is an NNP commentator on NNP's radio station in St. Patrick's, Mr. Francis Pear. He seems to have a propensity to mention Kellen Bubb that I'm somehow in the proverbial bed of Deacon Mitchell, because Deacon Mitchell went on a platform in the last election and challenged members of his cabinet to say that the NNP cabinet at the time that they would not appear on the Bubb Report, they would not appear on the narrative, they would not appear on Beyond the Headlines. And somehow he has extrapolated that to mean that I am an apologist for the NDC. But I guess it's good when both sides think you are an apologist for either side, because that is a mark of your independence. Raul?
Listen, we're going to hear that over and over. This narrative, let me borrow that line, Kalistra. We're going to hear this narrative over and over. As administration change, you're going to hear the same narrative. I've been hearing it for years. A new administration in power, so the media now, Kalistra is antagonistic and Bob is antagonistic and Linda is antagonistic, which they're supposed to be. So all those who support in the administration will say, okay, so why they're not silent now? Why they're speaking now when they were silent before? Then NNP is gonna come back in power. Maybe they will at some point. And then Bob is gonna take on NNP, and Kalistra is gonna take on NNP, and some other journalist is gonna challenge on policy issues, because that's what we're supposed to do, challenge them on policy issues. And then it's going to turn now, oh, now they're speaking up, now they didn't speak up before, whatever. I mean, that's just, I don't waste a lot of time on that. My point is central. You have asked yourself to run the country. You have asked to be elected. People have voted you in, right? So you know the government, right? You have know the government. You're a public official. Your responsibility is to provide public information. Say what you're doing. Announce your policies. Promote your policies. Do your work. If if you have a thin-skin approach to the media, it's not going to help. I mean, Keith Mitchell had a thin-skin approach to the media, and we beat up on him a lot because
And he still does, because he would not appear on the Bubb Report or the narrative.
We go back to Simon days and semi-final and Calypso. Why do you think we have two Calypso associations? Because he played the Calypso associations. Back then, when Beast and Scholar were raging back in the Simon semi-final days and pounding Keith Mitchell as Calypsonians pounding him, he didn't like it, right? And then he basically infiltrated the Calypso association. Oh, we have two Calypso associations. That's why we have two Calypso associations with different political agendas, right? And so on. So I am saying, if you put yourself up for public office, you have to be criticized. You have to be challenged. You have your policies. If you announce a policy, whether it's CBI, whatever it is, you have to be questioning it. You have to make yourself available to be questioned. You can't use different cloak and dagger methodology to control the press. You have to make yourself available. You come at a press conference, 3-hour press conference, 7 ministers. That's a form of control. You have to make yourself available to be interviewed, to be questioned. That is your role. It is not personal. No, it is not that the media doesn't like you. That's not. Let's elevate ourselves from that. Let's go to a higher level. Let's go to the level that says you come to represent people, and so you make yourself available to be questioned on the policy issue. Not so much your personal life. You have your personal life, fine. Good luck with that. But policy issues that affect, because what you do at a policy level could determine who eat good or who doesn't eat good, right? It affects people. Because the distribution of resources, you create policies. The distribution of resources affect people, right? As we see now. Right now, we're going into February. Everything is going up. A lot of money coming out people paycheck, to NIS, to utility companies. You're paying tax, and then you're paying tax on when you purchase. So a lot of more money coming out. So that affects people. 150 removed from people who are getting it. It affects people. Different things affect people. So as policymakers, you make those decisions, and you have to stand by a decision to be questioned. It's just that simple. We're not in a revolution era. We're in a democracy era. That is what you signed up for. So it's not personal. You have to accommodate the media, and you have to work with the media to present information in the public interest. It is that simple.
And it seems as though that there is a continuity in terms of media relations from the previous administration, because the previous administration as well, in respect of, for example, their approaches to press conferences, the Prime Minister, with the former Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, Dr. Keith Mitchell, he had these invitation-only availabilities, for example. And, some of the reporters went there and, they would, oh, Prime Minister, what did you have for lunch today? How do you stay so fit? Right? I'm just trying to mock Leslie Pierre, but this was Leslie Pierre's cadence, right? But that was also a problem, and I think we have to get away from these type of very staged events. And of course, governments they can determine what their PR is, but in terms of that press relations piece, I think that needs to change. But we have to get into a number of issues. We want to begin, with what's happening. Kalistra, go ahead, Kalistra.
Before you change issues, I just want to say to Dave that when I did send a note to the press secretary, sort of reminding her that the permanent secretary did not require her permission to do anything. In fact, So I hope that makes you proud.
Of course, Kalistra, of course, and it begs. And it even brings into context this whole perception of what is a cabinet briefing. If we look at the constitutional provisions, the cabinet is responsible to the parliament. So we are supposed to be getting our information from our representatives in the parliament. That's what section 59, subsection 3 of the Constitution says. The cabinet is responsible for all things done to the parliament. And it is in the parliament of the country where we have our representatives. And they're the ones who
I think we lost Dave there. I hope that was not an act of sabotage. It's a joke. It's a joke. Okay, it's not that serious. But I want him to also answer a question. But we have to get to tease out some of the issues. Last week, Kalistra, and we would start there first. A journalist in Grenada with a popular platform. He got into a back and forth with the member of parliament for Carriacou and PT Martinique, in which he posted something to the effect that there was a shortage of gas in Carriacou. Then the MP shot back to say that there is no shortage of gas. The premise was a notice posted by a particular gas station, no gas on until further notice. I want you to tease out that particular story for us.
Okay.
Kalistra.
Well, I was while I was off, I was notified of this situation that was going on between what was posted by the media person and the MP getting involved and the back and forth. So I went looking to see all of the bits that all the components of this exchange. So I saw the photograph that was posted. I saw the notes that was put on the top of the Facebook page talking about a gas shortage on the island. And for me, a couple of things it came out there. One was sourcing, that as media people, as journalists, media people too, sourcing is an important element. What is a credible source? And verification. So if that photograph was sent to me, what I would do is call the gas station. That would be the first call to the gas station, so that they can say what the sign means. Because when you look at it, you don't know what the sign means. It says no gas until further notice. That could be 30 minutes later. Okay, just because it says until further notice does not mean that it's 2 months down the road or a week down the road. It could be 30 minutes later. That is the reason why the sign had posted it. It could be that the fuel pump was functioning and they were waiting for the technicians to fix it. It could be that the gas truck broke down. It could be that they popped a flat tire on the way, and changing truck tires is not a 1, 2, 3 thing. There are several reasons why there might not have been fuel in the pump at the time that sign was up. And so before you go with the information, you have to find out. You have to fill out that pyramid, right? And finding out what is going on. That someone sending you a photograph from Carriacou and you taking it, accepting it as a credible single source is bad work.
Yes, single sourcing is not. I teach that. This is journalism 101. I teach that to my students.
But what
you don't single source. You don't single source. And that to me was a failure. Sorry, he can criticize me if he wants, but that was a failure.
I saw bits of information about it, but just following up on what Kalistra is saying, and to add to that point, yes, it's absolutely correct. And you picked that up as a seasoned journalist. The matter of context matters.
Absolutely.
Because if you go with that information and you say, well, this is the information, Kalistra brilliantly outlined the context. You have to provide the context to the information to qualify the information, because as you were saying, whether it's 30 minutes later, whether it's 2 hours later, whether it's 2 days later, and you get gas. So in researching your story, in building your story, in presenting your story, you must have the proper context. So in without knowing all of the specifics, I saw the issues around it and I heard the discussions around it. I'm supporting the notion that in good journalism, context matters to give the right information, because if you have the right facts up front, you could mislead people if you don't back it up with a proper context. Yep. And some stories require the right context so that people can understand what is going on.
Correct. And you all go ahead, Kalistra.
It said shortage. It gave the impression there was a shortage on the island, but without finding out whether or not the storage tanks on Carriacou are empty.
Right.
And correct, because that would be the source of the shortage, right? As opposed to supply chain logistic challenges that the gas station might have had, which has nothing to do with the idea that there was a general shortage on the island, because that was not the case. So, you know.
And for me, the why is so important in something like that. It could be that the gas station guy did not pay the fuel supplier. So they were waiting for a check so the truck can drive up and fill up the tanks. It could have been anything.
Correct.
And so we have a duty to give the full,
you have to give context. You have to give context.
That is what we do. So, you know, when you don't
absolutely.
do the job as a journalist.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the seed, a quick fire here. We've been seeing a lot of narratives on the seed. If we listen to the backers of the New National Party on their radio platforms, you hear one framing of seed as sort of a highway robbery, if you will, robbery with violence against the poor and vulnerable. And on the other end of the ledger, on the NDC, you hear NDC apologists saying that, well, the seed program needs to be sanitized, and that there are people on the program who should not be there. And then there is also the narrative of sort of calling people lazy. It's this sort of right-wing way of thinking about poor people. This bootstrapping. You need to get a job. Why are you on seed? So those are the two narratives that we're seeing play out. Callistra, you've been covering this issue way before the elections. Let's hear how you covered this.
Well, you know, it's shocking. Oh, the government took away $150 from the poor and vulnerable, which is this new category that the NNP, the last administration, created. The poor and vulnerable is actually a hyphenated kind of word if you listen to them, right? And it sounds bad and it looks bad. But as a journalist, what I wanted to find out was whether or not the country can sustain the additional $150, because that matters. Where the money comes from matters, because you give in one place and you have to take out in another place. And so can we afford it? And then you see a clip of the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, coming out where during the campaign he was saying, well, you know, they're really treating the poor and vulnerable badly and they need to give you more money. And then
Grenadians deserve a lot of money. That's his words.
Right. And but then the current Prime Minister said quite a few things on the campaign trail that once you become the leader, once you get into government, reality hits and you don't have a choice. You know, his pronouncements on the IMF was one of the, I don't know if he was being naive or simply just rolling with the campaign atmosphere when he talked about, you know, we don't need to listen to the IMF. And once he got in there, I'm sure he learned that we were so deep in bed with the IMF that he had to listen to their sweet nothings whispers in that bed. So on the $150, people need to be, if you're on seed, if you're on welfare, you need to be able to take care of yourself to a decent extent with what the government is providing. So they need to look at whether or not there's a good reason, a justification for taking it away. And I don't think that any government with its source is going to take $150 away from poor people if they can afford to pay it. That's just my personal opinion. What the government has continued to say was that it was just a temporary measure and it expired. Even under the NNP administration, the monies that had been allocated was not enough to cover that additional $150. And I'm wondering whether or not, in looking at the new budget and looking at the new allocations, did this administration remember to pay attention to how they were going to fit that $150 into our expenditure? And they either didn't, or found that when they crunched the numbers, we couldn't afford it. But I don't think that any sensible government is going to just take it out just for the sake of taking it out, because it's really bad politics and bad PR to take away from the poor.
Exactly.
But Roll, your thoughts?
Yeah, it is bad politics. No, this $150 dollars. I have to believe it was being targeted on the most needy, because I heard, I hear all the semantics about it and the politics back and forth and who trying to make who look bad and so on. I throw that out the window. I'm not focusing on that. Listen, you have people. Remember, Delma Thomas, who was social development minister, she said in an interview, okay, she said it was temporary. She herself said it was temporary. Okay,
and she was on the Bubb Report, and she made that point as well.
She said it was temporary, right? Because of the COVID and so on. Be that as it may, but also you have to give Delma credit too, because she was the one who revamped the seed program and social. This program was all over the place, right? She basically revamped that seed program so that it could focus on the most needy. This is why I said at the top of my point that I have to believe that the most needy was the ones who were benefited. Now, fast forward to this era where the most needy is existing in a climate where cost of living is going up. Everything is all our macro and micro indicators are pointing the wrong way, going south, right? Everything is going up now. You have to, you cannot not justify that the most needy doesn't need it now. So, in my view, if I were the current administration, I would prioritize. Forget about the semantics around it. Forget about whether it was permanent or not permanent. Forget about all the budgeting and who didn't budget and whatever. Throw that out the window. I am here now. This is what is happening. These people need it. I'm going to find it and I'm going to give it to them. It is that simple. It is that simple, because that's what it is for. If these people are vulnerable and they really need it, and I assume they are, because of the situation, you have to revamp the program and to target the most needy. So if they're the most needy, then they need it. They're the most vulnerable, then they need it. So the government, in my view, will have to find a way to make sure that they benefit from it. Forget the back and forth and the political back and forth and all that drama. That's how I look at it. Because, as Calista was pointed out, there's a political opportunity cost as well. That we realize there is a political opportunity cost that could work against them.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that with the NNP's rhetoric on this as well in opposition now, that the way that you listen to some of their programs, the way that it is also framed, that they're speaking to their base, people who traditionally are from the working class, but who benefited from seed and voted for the new National Party?
Yes, actually, Keith Mitchell built his reputation on that. Now, don't forget, before we're talking about transformation now, Keith Mitchell might be a bit of a scamp, we all know, but he made his name and he did a lot of good things. And one of the good things he did in the late 80s was, I don't know if Calistro remember it, the rural electrification program and that road construction throughout the rural community. What he did, remember when people were taking 3 shoes? You have to wear 3 shoes because you come through the mud and you have to change your shoe, and they build all these network of road through all these rural areas. He was works minister, I think, back then, and he led that, as well as a lot of lights in all of these rural villages. I think Munich was one who benefited. So he built his reputation on transforming the rural part of the country, because a lot of farmers got roads to their farms now. So he built his career on that poor and needy mantra, where you support the rural part and the poor part and so on, lights, water, and that sort of thing. So of course now, and some of his programs in contemporary Grenada now, he introduced he thinks so that will be a popular phrase among them. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised that he had a lot to say when that 150 was removed,
including allegedly calling the Plead Your Cause program, I believe, which is members of his base listen to that program as well. So I suspect he's going to where his base listens to, right, Calistro?
He is doing classic Keith Mitchell, what he does in opposition. Okay, I mean, you would really have to be a novice politician in opposition not to jump on that $150 removal from the port. I mean, this is like gold. This is M&M bowl of M&M candy. If you're in the opposition, you cannot not use it, and I don't fault him for using it and spinning it. But that is where the journalist comes in. We do not do the government spin. We do not do the opposition spin. We go in there and we find out what is the information, why the $150 was removed. Could provisions have been made so that, that things could be moved around so that it stays, given, as Raul said, the need that now exists. Even people who have a good income, because of inflation, because of recession and all the other issues, everything, the strap is tightening. And you find that out. You look at the faces behind the issue. You go and you find the people who have been impacted by no longer having that $150, which they had for the last year. And this is what we do. We look at all of the parts of the story and we present it to the public. And it is now up to the public to make a judgment and to decide what is going on. What the opposition is saying, what the government is saying, is a whole lot of noise and agenda-driven stuff until you treat the issue and look at all the pieces in it.
But I believe there also is a need for us to, and I include myself in that bracket as well, to compare the estimates of revenue and expenditure, because Gregory Bowen can make pronouncements with respect to the seed program in a budget debate. Delma Thomas can do the same. Gloria Thomas can do the same. But what was in the estimates?
Gregory Bowen is no longer in the parliament.
He's no longer in the parliament, but I'm saying that initial that initial increase was enacted when he was Minister of Finance. In the 2022 budget should reflect whether or not the estimates, at least, should reflect whether or not, and this is where the homework comes in, what does the estimate say? I don't care about your budget speech. Your budget speech is a flowery presentation of your agenda. It's a marketing tool. But what does that estimate, that big document that accompanies the budget?
It's a story of things hoped for, but what do the numbers come down to? What are the prevailing conditions that will impact on your revenue and your expenditure, really? Now, $18 million was the budgeted amount for the seed program, I believe. So additional amount, I can't recall how much it is, was needed to accommodate the $150 per person or per household, or however it worked. So the 18 million is also what we have to look at, is whether or not that 18 million is lower in the 2023 budget as well. That will tell us something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What's going on in the public finances, and what the government's, this administration's view and priority with the totem pole they put the welfare and the safety nets and taking care of the people. So a deep dive into the numbers of last year and this year, because the numbers tell a story. But in Grenada we're not really big on the data journalism, but we're not big on the data because it's when you look at it, it's a big task, and especially in a lot of the areas, the issues surrounding, and not the data. The data tells a story and means something to you. So we need to, because a lot of things are hidden in the numbers, and people depend on a few things. One, that we don't know the constitutions back and forth as people, so they can get away with everything. And then two, when it comes to financial and economic journalism and things like that, we do not have specialists and people sufficiently trained in that area, so they can say anything or do anything and hide behind the numbers and the big concepts and so on. And so a lot of this, so if you dive into it, it all comes down to, what does it mean to Auntie Jane and Uncle Joe up the road? That's what it's all about.
We will come up for air. We'll take a quick break here, but I just want to say about the state of journalism in Grenada, and yes, there is fair criticism around the quality of reporting that we see, the quality of questions that comes up in post-cabinet press briefings, or the quality of questions, or the quality of writing, quite frankly, from some journalists who should know better. I read a story last week about the alleged attack on one of the Prime Minister's security. I mean, I'm not going to say more than that. That was really written as if it was a Nancy story, right? And that Nancy story kind of writing that we see from people who should know better in the media is quite appalling. But the bigger point I'm making here is that while people critique the frontline journalists who are not paid well, who are not necessarily given the resources to upscale and to train and develop, you also have to examine the institution and entities within which these people work. A lot of the owners of media entities and media houses in Grenada are part of the private sector. Okay, we also have to lay blame at the foot of the entrepreneurs and the people who run these media entities for their failure to, quite frankly, provide the training to the people who need the training to become better at what they do. But we will take a quick break and we'll just address. Go ahead, Kalisha.
Before you go to what we need, when I talk about media policy, I'm not talking about anything that censors the media or steps press freedom. But you see, there is nothing that mandates the media owners to work by a particular standard. So we need to look at that.
And the late George Grant, and he's another mentor of mine. He would not bring anybody off the street to be a DJ on his radio station. He would never do that, So let's take a quick break, folks. We'll be right back. Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bubb Report social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity. And welcome back, folks. What we want to do now, yes, Mr. Ned, we're back. We're back now because we're getting to the end of the program here. But Mr. Ned, looking forward to the next, I would say, 11 months of the year from the Independent Caucus on Constitutional Reform. What are you hoping for? Yeah, go ahead, please.
If I may just shortly contribute to the issue of the seed.
Yes, sir.
For me, I'm saddened by the response with respect to the seed program. We have, and I say this against the backdrop that the whole purpose of government, all of the ministries, all the governors, the whole purpose is for the social, economic, civil, political development of people. And we have to make the resources available that people can provide livelihood for themselves. And for those who can't, it is the understanding that we will provide for these basic necessities. Now, the seed program, and we have politicized this program because of our partisan leanings. We have politicized the delivery of aid, the delivery of necessary goods to people who are needy. Mm-hmm. Now, nobody does that for whatever reason. Nobody does that. So you hear comments like the people who are weeded off are of a political party and they would not influence the next election and that sort of thing. And I mean, that is just disappointing because we are all created equal. We are all created equal, and the resources of the state are supposed to be dished out to us in a manner that we can benefit from. We have to move away from this partisan interpretation of everything. We put a partisan lens and we apply it to everything in the society. We are not going to progress. It is the reason why we are here now, 49 years after elections. And when we look back, all we can see is turmoil and division, because we have allowed this partisan political, it's almost as a dispensation now, to take root. And it drives us. Interestingly, the Constitution provides for Grenada to be divided for one purpose: for the election of representatives. It divides Grenada. Everything else is about a united Grenada. But after the elections, we persist with that division. And it is to our detriment. It will be to our detriment. And we will not progress. Because one government in, and it's my time. The other government in, and it's now we time. So where is the unity that is necessary for this country to progress?
Mm-hmm. And that's a very important point, and I think that is a perennial question that will continue to dog us. Perhaps, Mr. Ned, we might need to get rid of the and you might not like to hear me say that, but perhaps the current constitution. Let me get a word in, please. Perhaps the current constitution that we inherited from our colonizers needs to be thrown out the door. Quite frankly, because I believe the root of a lot of the divisions that we have in our society is because of the Westminster system. And that is why Gloria Thomas and Delma Thomas must be given credit for attempting to work around that system, because that system, Mr. Ned, quite frankly, has not helped us over the last 49 years. I'm sorry, that's just my view. I'm not saying that we ought to adopt extra judicial measures to get rid of the Constitution, but I do believe that there is an issue there with the Constitution. Mr. Ned got cut off. He did not leave the set. But your thoughts, gentleman and lady, on what Mr. Ned just said.
Actually, the point you were starting to make there, and you were making, I sort of, it resonates with me, because what Delma and Gloria are doing, I also applaud it, because they basically saying, okay, put yellow here and put green here, put that aside. Let us work together for the benefit of our constituency.
Not wanting to cut you off, hold that thought. I believe Mr. Ned is back. I did, Mr. Ned, I'm sorry. I did not mean to. The internet got dropped off, but I wanted you to get your rebuttal into what I just said quickly.
You were speaking as to the contribution the Constitution is making to the present demise that we are in.
Yes.
And you alluded to the Westminster system. Okay, so the Grenada Constitution is within the region. Our Constitution is probably the most unique Constitution there is. We got our Constitution at a period in our history when there was a lot of political turmoil. And because of that, there were very specific provisions in that Constitution that limits the authority of the politician. So our Constitution is in fact not a part, our Constitution makes our democracy a constitutional democracy, i.e. that the Constitution is in charge, and it places the Constitution in the arms of the people. So when the British gave us our independence, Eric Gary says that he is receiving the Constitution on behalf of the people. Only the people change. Whereas Jamaica, Trinidad, we just saw it in Barbados, that the parliament can get up and change a constitution. It can't happen in Grenada. We also have the ability to put what we want in the constitution. And herein lies the issue, right? And I just saw a comment coming up now with regards to partisan politics. Our constitution does not recognize partisan politics.
Parties.
There was an attempt to introduce it in the last referendum, the partisan politics. And the people refuted it. They voted no. So we ascribe again a lot of power to individuals in office that they don't have. And the Constitution limits that authority. One simple analysis. We have a chief of police. The chief of police is a constitutional position. We are now being summoned, if you have an issue with the court, by a commissioner of police. But that was refuted in the last referendum because it was brought to the people to change from chief of police to commissioner of police. Interestingly, what is the difference between the chief of police and a commissioner of police? Well, we all look at Indians and cowboy movies. In the Indian society, you have the chief and you have the Indians. The chief is the chief. That's it. When you have a commission, you have a commission, you have assistant commission, you have commissioner responsible for this, that, and the next. As the chief of police is responsible for everything. And when we don't understand those very subtle differences, then we are taking for a ride with all those proposed what looks like glorious, nice sounding changes in a referendum. And when you look at any referendum, let me just say this, any referendum that takes away power from the people and places it in the hands of a parliament or any other authority is not in the interest of the people. And I think that is what happened in 2016. It happened again in 2018. And it is a debate that we need to get into because the power of the press, the power of media, those people who manage propaganda is powerful. So you say one thing to the population, but when what is written is another thing. And that has been our experience for both referenda.
All right, Mr. Ned. Thank you for that. Absolutely, we are the bosses of the politicians, and that is an important distinction that we need to make. Sometimes we ascribe power, as you said, to these politicians. We give them godlike status. Yes. Now they have nicknames. Callistra referred to one as Godfather and the other as Baby Jesus. Callistra, is that the term? Your words, not mine.
The Godfather reference, there are those who will get it. It's one of those who knows why that reference there. So
okay, all right.
I was taking a bit of license and in creating and crafting the piece, and certainly the names that I use there does not reflect my view of any individual. And those who know me well enough knows that there are no Jesus except the real Jesus for me. So yeah, but I want to just come in here on what what you said about we just need to toss the Constitution out the door and create something that we feel might be more relevant and working for us. Part of the problem here, right? We have areas that we need to fix in our Constitution. I agree. But part of the problem here is that Grenadians, some people are not even aware of that 1970, that Constitution order. There are people who don't know, the Constitution is not part of their lives. They don't even know that it exists. It's that extreme. Then you have people who have never read it. And so the way we have to use our Constitution to manage our country as a people, it is not happening. It is not happening. It's one of the things that I'm working now on as the chairperson of the Media Association training committee, is training on the Constitution, what the Constitution says and what applies where and how, so that media can get it. And then we can begin the process to spread out the information, to get a greater understanding among the people. Because Grenada is not Mount St. Catherine, which is also beautiful, or Grandland Beach, which is also wonderful if you get the beer bottles and stuff out from the ocean bed. It is the people. The country is the people. And so when we talk about the country this and the country that, what we're saying is the people, and the people need to engage on a different level. We need to engage on a level that has to do, a lot of the engagement goes to buttressing the politician's position, keeping the politician in power, rather than protecting ourselves as citizens and protecting our country, which is the citizens really of the country. I mean, you know, we're leading up, we're about to start a journey down to being half a century old, and the Constitution is not featuring very much in these celebrations. It's going to be, it has to be up to the media to put information, to put the Constitution into the context of the everyday life of the Grenadian people. We're gonna have to do it.
Correct, but let us give Mr. Ned and his organization credit. The Independent Caucus on Constitutional Reform, they have had several public education campaigns going back to the glory days of George Grant. Yes, they have had, and when they advertise these public education campaigns, how many people participate in that? How many people participate in that? How many citizens actually?
I think they may have to get some expert PR assistance.
Well, no. People like Beverly Sinclair is part of.
But
Go ahead.
Yeah. But you see the reach, how you reach people, where you reach people, when you reach people. You just listen to the name, all right? The Independent Caucus of Constitutional Reform. That guy down the road in the rum shop who needs to know what his constitution says.
Ain't nothing sexy about that.
Digging that name. There's nothing sexy about that, baby. So I think it needs to be a bit more approachable. It needs to be a bit more approachable. You gotta sell to the you gotta package the product for each customer.
Can I make a quick point here?
Yeah, make a quick point, and then we'll have to get Mr. Ned to defend himself, and then we have to quickly get to two other issues before we close the program. Go ahead, Rob.
I'll make the point very quickly. There's a lot going on here that we haven't really addressed really. Now, I just want to roll back towards 1979, 1983, that revolutionary era. A different mindset, a different mentality, and a different cultural, a different way of life in relation to how we interact with the outside society. Then fast forward to this new society, post-invasion, which we change our socio-economic profile, right? In which a whole generation or several generations grew up to this new socio-economic climate of how we eat, how we socialize, how we dress, how we exchange with each other, the way we live, right? This new climate where the focus is on fast food, fast life, individualism, not back where you had a level of consciousness and a level of patriotism and a level of desire and a level of civic awareness. There's a whole radical revolutionary change in society now that we're dealing with. So the messages you're trying to bring out now, it's getting lost in this multiple climate, this multiple societies, this different layer of societies we listen to. You're not getting the attention of the entire nation, right? You're getting the attention of some, most don't care, some tune into this, some tune into that. You don't have a united country. We don't really have a united country in a sense that as compared to our revolutionary period, when you say that we were thinking, a lot of people we were thinking like the same way, we were patriotic and we were aware and we were community focused and we wanted to educate the elderly as well as the young, and that sort of vibe and passion for country and development, that isn't existing no more. So we're in a new climate. So when you tell people about constitutional reform and the right to vote and some of the micro issues and macro issues of politics and governance and things, the vulnerable, all they know is they tend to gravitate towards supporting a party so they can get benefits. So I'll support NNP so I can get my benefit, and I'll support NDC so I can get my benefit. We're not upscaling to a different level of mature thinking, of mature, where the focus is on social security of people and national security of people and protection of people and upward mobility of people and education of people and transformation of society and people. We're not on transformation of the health sector in that organized way and the road network and development and all of that. We're not there. We're not really there. All we're doing really, we increase a tax, we reduce a tax. We increase a tax, we reduce a tax. We introduce a program, we revamp a program, we change a program around, we switch. That's where we are. So we basically spinning top in mud and so on. So all credit to what Ned and his team is doing. There's validity in it. But we're really stumbling here. This is why I was making the point, 49 years on. Where are we?
That's and we have a poignant comment here. Raul, you're getting some applauses here. Brenda Batiste is saying, no reading and enlightenment, just running with talking heads of tribes. We are not interested in enlightenment. It's not sexy and salacious enough. Yes, you look at the Bubb Report and the numbers we get as opposed to the numbers other platforms get. Again, I don't really follow the numbers. I am more interested in what the people are educating us on this platform. That's why I do it. On all sides, to bring up debates on all sides. Mr. Ned, you heard Rawls.
Okay. So, Ron, my introduction to the Constitution was we were doing a Godfrey interview with Dr. Francis Alexis. And he said the same words that you say. Yeah, the Constitution is not sexy. Okay. And that resonated with me. And it was the source of the beginning of a number of interactions, public consultations. And we've had consultations at the University of SGU. So we've spoken to the social class. We've met with them, presented for an hour and a half. After the FROC had presented, and the students were saying that they, based on the presentation, that the official who were supporting the referendum, they could not write the paper that they were going to write. And we presented afterwards, and they did. And we were consistently leaving Willis at 11:15 in the night, and non-parallel at 11:30 in the night, having started sessions at 7 o'clock. So the perception that people are not listening is false. Not everything that is media is on the television and on social media. We engage with people one-on-one, and we've gone into communities. There are 80 people, and they sit from 7 in the evening until after 11. And nobody leaves. We have gone to Karakou and engaged young people, 25 of them, whole day sessions. Everybody comes at the morning, everybody goes to lunch, and everybody comes back. When the Petit Martinique boat is leaving, the boat has to be blowing because there are people sitting there. So the whole perception that the Constitution is not being taken, it is. We are a voluntary organization. Most of this, we have to find funds for it. We had a program on GBN that we had to pay for. That was discontinued because we couldn't pay for it. Because the private sector not giving us money, the public sector not giving us money, but it is in the people's interest. It is in the people's interest. So we have to continue the engagements. And by and large, we hold meetings every Monday, and we discuss every Monday evening at 8, and we discuss the Constitution and the provision of the Constitution. And there are a lot of people who blame the Constitution. You see comments coming up, the Constitution is outdated. I challenge anybody to point to one section of the Constitution, not 2, not 3, not 4. One section, one provision in the Constitution that needs revising. Tell me one. And I've been putting that challenge out for the last 4 years. Nobody has been able to respond because we go based on the perception that over the last 30 years, what we see is what is in the Constitution. And what we've seen, the experience of the last 30 years, the experience, I may even put it, of the last 49 years of our independence. If you read the document, it's foreign. Everything that is happening there is foreign.
All right, Mr. Ned, thank you for that. Quickly, folks, we have to we have to segue now into what's happening in the new National Party. I'm sure that the NDC folks who were a bit aggrieved by what were talking about with respect to the NDC might be happy now that we are segueing into the opposition party, and vice versa. So let us talk about the new National Party. Dr. Mitchell Kalistra, he has been on a media tour, if you will. He's been on MTV. He has been on the Talking Points program. He has been doing different other availabilities on radio, on WeFM, for example. Let's get your thoughts on what is unfolding. They're supposed to have a convention this year. What are your tea leaves saying about what's happening in the new National Party at this moment? I'll start with Kalistra and then I go to Rohlehr.
Let's not forget that he's calling plead your cause, baby. But what's happening with the NMP right now certainly is interesting. The party seems to be, from what my information is telling me, somewhat fragmented over those who would prefer that Dr. Mitchell not be challenged as the leader, and those who recognize and acknowledge what the results of the last general elections have shown them, which is that the party requires a leadership change, a revamping of the management of the party in order to move forward, to be more relevant to the Grenadian voter right now. Whether or not Dr. Mitchell is willing to let go, or whether or not he's looking at things and saying to himself, well, you know, those guys are gonna wobble, and if I give up now, if I rush to convention and I put a new leader in place, I need the chance to get my one for the road that he seems to think is his God-given right, and that the country is going to be plunged into crisis, and only Keith Mitchell can save us. That sort of attitude. Are we going to see that happening, and him staying on? And some are saying to what could be to the detriment of the party, and I spoke about that in the last commentary I did. And we look at the GLP and the void, the leadership void that has plagued the party for so long, and basically pushed the party just to the side of the cemetery, if not in the grave, maybe in the grave, because they keep trying to come back. So I'm saying, you know, on the side of the cemetery. But you know, can we see that happening with this desire by the current leader of the NNP to stay on and to hold on and to consider himself the only option for leadership of the party, and is the only option for leadership of the country? Whether or not, there's the other issue of whether or not there are people in the party who are strong enough to organize the delegates and to go after leadership. Dr. Mitchell was not shy about doing that in the 80s, and pulling the party right out from under Herbert Blaise. He felt that at the time that was what was needed. And I think that the NNP is facing such a moment again. Whether or not there's a Keith Mitchell within the NNP right now who is going to say, you know what, we're taking the party and to move it forward to the next level, or whether or not people will simply just work with Dr. Mitchell's agenda. I heard on your program a few weeks ago, Peter David, who is considered one of the contenders for leadership of the NNP, saying that, well, Dr. Mitchell has said he's going, and if he goes, I will consider, was it he said?
Yes, he said he's actively considering, yes.
Actively considering. For me, even in his answer, you're hearing, you know, is he going to do it or is he going to not do it? You know, is he one of those people who believes that the leadership of the party needs to change? I believe he's one of those people, but is he acting in that way? Dr. Mitchell says, for what I got from what Mr. David, MP David, said was that if Dr. Mitchell changes his mind midstream, then he's simply going to step back and allow Dr. Mitchell a clear field to seek to remain as the leader of the party, and would not challenge him. We all know Dr. Mitchell, it is unless he really comes to the point where he's ready to give up, which I seriously doubt, having watched him as a politician, just been from a child right up, because I've always been paying attention to what was happening in the country, watching him from then to now, I don't think he's the kind of person who is going to say, here it is, take the next leg of the journey for me. He's the kind of person, if he passes, run with me, I need to help you get to the next person in the relay. And that's who I see him as. So I don't see him giving up. What happens then? What happens with who may feel that there are better options out there? Are they going to challenge him, or simply let the status quo continue? They all seem to be afraid to challenge him, which is what I think it comes down to for us to see Dr. Mitchell not continue to be the leader of the NNP into the next general elections, which is supposed to be in 2027.
Raw?
Yeah, I want you to understand how Dr. Mitchell is thinking. I want you to go back in political history, some various points in political history, very quickly. Go back to how power was usurped from Herbert Blaise. 1. 2. Go back to how he took the Gary votes, the Gary supporters. He basically led NNP towards taking that bulk of Gary supporters. Those Gary supporters went into the NNP camp. That's 2. 3. During the NDC time, when NDC was imploding, look at how he maneuvers his way and pull Peter David in, because Peter David was polling more than Dr. Mitchell at that time in terms of popularity. And Peter David is basically the one that brought the fractions together that led NDC to that victory. He had to go and campaign to let Tillman talk. He did a lot of mobilizing. So he look at the manner in which he pulled Peter David in to NNP, but also look at the manner in which he distanced Peter David when Peter David come into NNP and NNP was in government. There's a method to his politics, very crafty. Now look at what's happening now. Dr. Mitchell, I believe one of the factors, there could be other factors, one of the factors that Dr. Mitchell is considering and staying on and possibly getting one for the road, possibly, is NDC and its potential fragility, its potential longevity, whether it can, because remember, NDC's victory, by all accounts, wasn't a solid victory. I think about 3,000 votes as it may be. And NDC, NNP supporters are really blaming Dr. Mitchell, and Dr. Mitchell did make a lot of tactical mistakes, including political mistakes, that helped NDC to win. Dr. Mitchell is looking at all of this, and he's looking at NDC, and he's by the slips waiting. Remember, he's a cricketer. He's by the slips waiting. He's by the slips waiting. And I think that is one of his considerations, outside of the fact that I think there's another individual, I believe, who's influencing him too. I don't need to go into that. If you know the politics and the tea leaves and the personality.
Raul, I'm sorry. As journalists, we have to say the person's name. It's the former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance. We know that. Let's not. I will go there. People are afraid to call this woman's name. Come on, let's stop that.
I don't want to go into it in terms of specific allegations that I cannot defend in terms of a legal point of view.
In terms of allegations, but I mean, this is public record. Kajitan Hood, the former Attorney General, he was going to challenge that alleged relationship, through the Integrity Commission, conflict of interest. But go ahead, please.
So there are influences on Dr. Mitchell, right? And there are considerations. So I think he's considering these things very much. And don't forget, he might be edging up to octogenarian status, but he's fit, he has eaten his regimen, he exercised, he eats well, and he looks much better than people 40 years younger than him, right? So I wouldn't blame him for wanting to look and see and make a tactical move towards state. This is why the Peter David comment upset him. He wasn't really. He didn't like the fact.
He was
David
not.
Was cautious. David was
Peter,
cautious.
And what struck me was the way that he responded, which tells me that Dr. Mitchell looks at the Bubb Report. Dr. Mitchell, if you do look at the Bubb Report, please, the platform is open for you to. You can plead your cause. You can go on MTV. You can come on the Bubb Report. Please.
Peter David comment touch a nerve, and Peter David said it in the most in the best
diplomatic
way
of ways. Yeah.
Diplomatic of ways, because he didn't want to appear as though he challenging him, and so on. But the truth about it, I believe, while there's a possibility that he may want to stay, I think there's a faction within the party, and that is what's causing a lot of the disgruntlement and friction within the party now. They're upset with him to some extent on they're blaming him for the loss. But also, I think there's a section that really feel if there's a smooth transition, NNP is a viable option, remains a viable option, because NNP has a solid base and they're pretty well organized. And they are potential leaders who can replace Dr. Mitchell. There's a lot of potential leaders, well, quite a few who can replace him. So in all fairness, Dr. Mitchell is at the crossroads now. He lost his opportunity to go out on a high when I think coming to the back-to-back victory, the last one. I think after the last victory, he could have called it a day, stick to his word, call it a day, and left his political legacy and his economic legacy and everything and go out on a high. But he's basically now at the point where he potentially tarnishing his political legacy. Well, his economic legacy, he's done some good things for Grenada in terms of leading us out of difficult situations. Let's be honest with that. But his political legacy is in jeopardy of being tarnished at this point in time because he lost now. I mean, yes, he had back-to-back victories, 15-0 and all of that. I mean, the record, he's lifted the bar politically, let's be fair to him. But he's in a position now where he wants one. He seemed to be pondering one for the road again. And the more he stays on, it hemorrhages the party. One for the road is a personal thing. He has to think party and country as opposed to Dr. Mitchell and so on. Legacy is already there. So he's thinking one for the road. He's pondering, and he's looking for it. And if the opportunity comes, like whatever disagreement that may exist in NDC or whatever may throw them off, he's gonna pounce. He is that ruthless politically. We know that.
Yeah.
So the longer he hemorrhages and the longer he delays and the longer the more cemented the division within the NNP becomes, and the less favorable NNP best chance now is new leadership that everybody supports, that could come up as a viable opposition. So basically, Dr. Mitchell thinking at a personal level for his one for the road, if that's the way he's thinking, it's not doing any good for his party.
Well, Raw, look at that. Some of the folks who were going after you previously are now agreeing with you. So they found some points.
It is what it is. What can I say?
Agreement there. Kalistra, are you still with us?
I am.
Yes. So you've heard Rohlehr and you've articulated that view. So let us finally, and we're going to wrap up the program now.
Go ahead, Raul was spot on, but let me just say that I was told that the former permanent secretary in finance might be the best conduit through which to secure interviews with the opposition leader. So just a little tip if you're interested.
The one that he warned you to don't go there about. Yes.
Well, you see, and I know it's time to wrap up. And I know it is when the music is playing and it's time to wrap up. But let me say here that I never asked the current opposition leader, former prime minister, about that relationship. I never did. The then prime minister was making a comment about something at the news conference and mentioned his wife. As far as I know,
he's the one that raised the issue.
Raised the issue, not Kalistra.
I didn't. He raised the issue by talking about his wife at a time when the entire country was gossiping about what his marital status was. And the question to him was, I see you refer to her as your wife, sir.
Exactly.
Does that mean the rumors that you are divorced and not true? That
fair
question.
That was a question, and that was a fair question. Yeah.
Fair question. Any journalist who worth the salt will pounce and ask that question. Fair question.
Yeah.
But
Kalistra,
he never was about that.
Maybe that's why he does not come on the narrative, because I'm sure he probably felt aggrieved that you asked that question. How dare you mind my business?
I'll probably ask his godchild to give him a call and use that influence to get him on. But I mean, I continue to try. Now as the opposition leader, he he needs to speak in mainstream media. The comfort zone interviews that he's doing, it's one thing, fine, I don't fault him for it, but he should make himself available to other media. He's been in power he was in power for a long time, and should be able to stand on his record and face independent interviews. That have, I will use your program here to say that I have no intentions of asking him about who he's dating these days or whatever. That is of particularly no interest right now.
Yeah, but of course, in government, the only reason why that should have been of public interest was where matters of conflict of interest arose. For example, the Prime Minister's son, my classmate, and I would say it, Olinga Mitchell, worked in government as well. Some may say that was a conflict of interest. Here you are hiring your son. Nepotism. Yes, that is a fair question, given the context of our conflict of interest rules, given what the Integrity Commission speaks to around reducing these conflicts of interest. So these questions are fair questions. These questions are also fair questions in the context of this current administration as well, because I did pose the question to Deacon Mitchell about people that he was close to personally, who then got board appointments within government. His supporters were not necessarily pleased that I asked the question, but the question needs to be asked. Yeah. So, all right, quickly, Delma Thomas, the Thomas relationship there. Get you guys' thoughts on that, and then we'll get to the end of the program.
Well, just to quickly state, like I said earlier, reference earlier, we are hard on politicians. We criticize politicians, public officials, and so on. We ask for better politics. Now you have both of them coming with a better politics. This is my view. I think what they're doing is good. It's bipartisan, it's cooperation. They're working together to distribute the assets of the state for the people. They may not be perfect in doing it. I hope it continues. I hope it doesn't collapse. They'll face pressure politically because you know how our politics is. So Delma is going to face. She said she has not left NNP. Delma is going to face pressure from NNP hardliners. Gloria may face some pressure from NDC hardliners, but they're setting a new bar for cooperation in Grenada. We are a small nation. It's only that amount of assets we have to distribute and to support people and programs. So they're trying something new, which for constituency and country. And I cannot come up with an argument that works against them. Politics is about, and even if I were to look at it from a political standpoint, just for a moment, politics is essentially about multiplication, not division. So both of them could benefit politically from what they're doing. So I see it as a good thing. I mean, it's not Dr. Mitchell.
Raul, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, but let us flip this script a bit, shall we? The New National Party was in power, right, and the NDC, let's say the NDC had a few seats. Let's say, for example, that Gloria Thomas won the St. Andrew Northwest constituency. Do you believe that members of the National Democratic Congress would be cheerleading Gloria Thomas to say, yes, work with Delma, you
right.
know? Do you think that because I just believe that, people are talking about that political pressure that she's getting from her camp.
Yeah.
Do you believe that that's just par for the course, that's just politics? Yeah.
Well, that scenario is hypothetical, but yet it should be commented on. You know what's unique about the Delma Gloria bromance, as you put it, and I think maybe that's what makes it so organic. And maybe it may not have worked in other constituencies. What makes this so special and so organic is that these two have this history together of years. These two history of relationship didn't come overnight, and it didn't come through politics. These two have been friends or family or thing for years. As a matter of fact, they both laughed at this joke. I think it was on Calestra's program. They were being interviewed. And I think Gloria, they said that that it's possible that Delma's stepfather might have been dating Gloria, and they both laughed at it. So they both made a light moment of it. So these so it's quite organic. They have this relationship with them that's been good friends for years, and so on. That helped it. It might have been more difficult, whether it's blue, whether it's green or yellow, in other constituencies where people didn't have that organic relationship. But it came out in the Calistria interview that I listened to. I think it was a very good interview, and that the relationship between the two came out into how they related over the years. And I think maybe that's what's helping and making it easier. That's why the chemistry of both of them seems so unpressured by all this back and forth talk about it. The chemistry seems so easy in terms of how they sit them together, they go to functions together, and they seem to be working together. They texting each other, and so on. So if it's working, and it's working for people, and it's working to better people, fine. Go for it. It may not work that well in other constituencies where two people come and don't have that long historic organic relationship. The politics may tear it apart, but the foundation of friendship between both of them, I think it's a strong platform that helps what they're doing and make it better.
So you're saying that because of that unique relationship between the two, that would help them to craft that. I doubt we would have seen that with Tevin Andrew and what's Kindra Matrin Stoughton and Carrico and P.T. Mark.
I doubt so very much. I doubt very much. I doubt.
So what we want to do, folks, Calistria, we have exhausted our time, unfortunately, but I'll get back to you for some closing comments. But I want to start with some closing comments from Mr. Davened. Mr. Davened, thank you, sir, for agreeing to appear on the program. I believe this is your first time on the Bubb Report. We have had other members of the Independent Caucus on the report, but this is the first time we've had you here, and I certainly hope that this would be one of many visits to the Bubb Report in which we attempt to educate and empower the people. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb. And on behalf of the ICCR, the Independence Caucus for Constitution Reform, I want to thank the Bubb Report for this opportunity that we've had so that we can discuss issues around the Constitution. Our organization, as I said, it is a voluntary organization. We've had members of our youth. I'm almost sure. I think one of our youth members came on the Bubb Report before. Yeah, with the Attorney
That
General.
is correct. With the Attorney, yes, correct. With Mr. Ramdani at the time, yes. Correct.
Right. So we have had engagements on your program before. And, we look forward to more of those. We have a very solid youth representation. And as you saw, they are able to stand toe-to-toe with anybody, professional, from whatever strata. I'm really impressed. I'm really proud of the young people that we have that are undertaking to study the constitutional provisions and to study that the whole process of governance and the issues that are affecting our development process. Just briefly, our chairman, I want to say thanks to the chairman for affording us the opportunity today, again, that I can have this discussion. We look forward to any avenue that we can discuss and empower the people, let them understand that they are, in fact, the custodians of the Constitution and that our representatives in Parliament are our employees. It's difficult because they have been socialized differently for almost decades of influence. And that is the battle that we fight. But it has not been a battle without progress. And we're seeing progress more and more with the use of social media and the involvement again of our young people. I see that one by one, and it is virtually one by one, you're converting people. We are tasked now with trying to get the Constitution into the schools. Some mechanism that the that the fundamental principles be reinforced in the schools by teaching, and not just at TAMCC where it's optional.
Yeah.
And it comes from a simple premise that how can you engage? If the Constitution are the rules and regulations that governs the relationship between you and the government, and you don't know those rules, how are you going to interact with the government? Because everything that you do with regards to the government is based on those rules. So it's not rocket science that you're supposed to know this thing. You're supposed to know it. And we just want to say that we're looking for those avenues whereby we can disseminate the information.
Absolutely.
So we thank you.
Yes. Raul, closing comments from you. Thank you. I know that you've taken some time off your personal time to be here with me. So I appreciate the time that you're taking to spend with us today.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to wrap up, so far, let's see, 7 months, the new administration in office, I wish them all the best. If they succeed, we succeed, Grenada succeed. And it's as simple as that. They will have some challenges. There have been some stumbles. They've made some stumbles, you know. I'm looking at the economic...
Every administration would.
Of course. I'm looking at the economic indicators. I'm looking to see, because I see some juggling and some economic dancing around in terms of the numbers and in terms of the figures. I hope we don't run into a situation that we came out of and we have to go back into. So I wish them all the best from that standpoint. I wish our media all the best as well. Stay on the politicians. Remember, you have to challenge them, and it's nothing wrong with having this antagonistic relationship where you have to challenge them to comment on their policy, not to be personal and not to get into their personal businesses unless it affects policy issues, and so on. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to thank you and Callistra and some, and even the journalists who have been doing a good job in terms of challenging Linda, Callistra, yourself, keeping the... I try to do a few things now and then when I have the time, but I'm kind of busy well, I'm down here now, but up there when I up there, and so on. So let's hope things go from strength to strength. Grenada goes from strength to strength. 49 years we celebrating at this point in time. I had some good Montgomery's breakfast this morning. They have oil down later, so I might check them for that. All the best, guys. Thank you.
All right. We need more Royal Tituses and more Callistra Farriers and more Kellen Bubbs. We need to flood the zone. Yeah, right. I'm on Paul. Callistra, over to you. You're having quite the moment in Grenada these days with your narrative commentary. So
when have I not been having quite the moment, really? And it's par for the course. Once I signed up to be a journalist, I understood my role because I sat at the feet of the veterans who came before me, and I understood my role and I learned my role. And there's a reason why it seems like I'm always at odds or antagonistic to particularly those who are in government. Because I say to people, how I engage you in the opposition might be slightly different from how I engage you when you're in government, when you're accountable to the people. And I have to report to the people on what you are up to. It is going to be a bit different there. And that the relationship is never one of sunshine and roses. It cannot be. If it is, then something is wrong with how you're doing your work as a journalist. And so we need to stick at it and remember that we have, in the case of Grenada, 110,000 constituents, not 12,000 because we represent South St. George or whatever. It's 110,000 or whatever the population is right now. We have to keep that in mind. As we do our work, we are the fourth estate, and we ought not to take that lightly. I mean, we have a seat at the table. We are part of the process. We are part of making the system strong and making the system work. And so we must do it. For every one of us who does not do a job properly, we sacrifice the system. We interfere with the integrity of the system, which we ought not to be doing. So, at 49, heading to 50, my hope is that the core of journalists and media people, because it's not just journalists these days, because of how information and communication has changed, a lot of people now have access. So you have all different types of practitioners within the space. You have journalists and announcers, and commentators, and just a guy with a microphone and that kind of thing. And democracy allows everybody to speak, but we must recognize what the role of everybody has, so that we must put everything into context, so we understand when someone does something a particular way, what it means. That what I do as a journalist is different from what a guy on a radio station who's been given an hour and to talk does. I have a level of responsibility and parameters within which to operate that he is guided by. So he can wake up one day and simply just say, "Oh, the treasury is empty." He can do that. I need to verify that the treasury is empty or whatever before I can say that. Just by way of example, people are not saying the treasury is empty. The PS assured me it's not. And still digging on that salary issue. And so, what happy independence to everyone. Let's try to achieve true independence. We keep talking about true independence. That's about bringing our literacy rate back down, which is climbing 49 years later. And after so much, 79 to 1983, we're back to having a population where the rate of the illiteracy rate is rising. We cannot have citizens engaged properly if we have that situation going on. And I think there was a particular effort to cultivate sort of backwardness among the population, because it facilitated a particular type of politics and the power grab. But we need to reverse that. I mean, that has to be part of the transformation process. Otherwise, transformation is going to have a hard time getting anywhere if the people are not engaged in the way that they're supposed to be engaged. But for what it's worth, happy independence to my people. And Kellan, it's a shromance, not a romance. It's a shromance.
A shromance, yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I have to be gender sensitive. I should know better, right?
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Our viewers and listeners, I wish to thank our panelists for this week, Mr. Roll Titus. He is in a different professional space, but he still practices some level of journalism, Mr. Dave Ned, and Kalistra Faria, my colleague Kalistra Faria. We still do active journalism, and even though I'm based here in the United States in Washington, D.C., I would still find time to support the quality of journalism in Grenada, which has sadly suffered over the years. But on behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I wish to thank all of you for, again, your continued participation and viewership. Remember to share this program. And if you did not get a chance to catch this program live, you can catch it tonight at 8 p.m. on WPG 10. And you can catch it on Wednesday at 4 p.m. on CRFM in Grenada and at 5 p.m. on the Grenada Broadcasting Network television. Again, I'm your humble servant, Dr. Kellan Bubb, wishing all Grenadians, near and far, a happy 49th anniversary of independence. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.